Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Animation Assemble. Before we start, I'd like to say a huge thank you to the sponsor of this session, Animation UK. The CMC depends on our sponsors to be able to deliver the conference, and we couldn't do it without them. So thank you, Animation UK, for your continued support. So thank you all for coming, especially those of you who are up till 3 a.m. at the karaoke. I'm Jodie Morris. I'm an independent consultant and also a founding partner of the kids media consultancy collective Creative Sprouts. This morning, we're going to be talking about the animation industry, obviously, and in particular, the rapid change that is seemingly coming at it from all angles. It's been a few years of disruption already, and I think we're all agreed that that disruption is far from over. So we're going to be looking at what lies ahead and how we respond to ongoing change. How do we shake things up in the theme of the conference and work out ways to adapt, to respond, and to thrive when things are, let's face it, quite tough. So Animation Assemble is a session that happens every year at CMC. But in the spirit of shaking things up, we wanted to do things differently this year. So instead of hearing from the big corporations, you'll be hearing from an esteemed panel of independent consultants who have been kind enough to lend us their brains for the day. I'm going to do some quick introductions. Their names are up there, thank you. Jelle Esmat has been at the forefront of global content distribution for over 2 decades. She's previously held senior roles at Paramount, at Sony, NBC Universal, and at Moonbug. Now as founder and CEO of 8 Lions, Jelle and her team build digital-first franchises for kids and teens, and they're on a mission to create globally resonant, data-informed properties that entertain across cultures, from the East and Middle East to the West. Thank you, Jelle. Robin Gladman, who I'm sure many of you will know, has 20 years of experience in the industry and has worked with some of the most respected names in animation, including Aardman, 20th Century Fox, Magic Light, and Locksmith Animation. Now an independent consultant, Robin helps clients thrive across all stages of IP development and financing, from creative development to business and commercial strategy, global distribution, and beyond. Thank you, Robin. Sorry, I left a bit off, which is actually really important. Robin has a strong track record in culturally nuanced markets, so notably China and Japan. So he has extensive experience in building brand discoverability and content strategy for YouTube. You don't get another round of applause, yeah?
Fair enough.
John is a leading media executive with over 30 years' experience in the children's and family content industry. He's successfully secured development, financing, distribution, and co-production partnerships with names including Amazon, Apple, BBC, Cartoon Network, Disney, DreamWorks. There's quite a lot there. As founder of Flipside Media, John specializes in helping producers, creators, and investors navigate the international market to finance, package, and deliver premium children's content and family programming. Thank you, John. And last but not least, Laura Taylor-Williams is a seasoned digital distribution executive with over 18 years of experience at studios including NBC, Universal, Warner Brothers, and most recently Aardman. Now working as a distribution consultant, content strategist, and leveraging her digital and audience development expertise to help clients. And Laura also sits on the Creative Wales board as a non-exec director and on the advisory board of Film Hub Wales, Carnarvon Film Cymru. Thank you, Laura. So we're going to start by talking about our independent status, because it strikes me that not having big corporations here, we're all working with lots of different people, and so we have a different perspective on how the industry is at the moment. So I wanted to start by asking, what has working independently allowed you to see differently? And has your view of the industry changed now that you're operating differently within it? What are the pros and cons of being independent as being in a big company?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
I'm loving it, actually, working with multiple different clients in different sectors. You see different starting points for properties, you know, whether that's as a video content or as a game, whether it's within YouTube or in a broadcast environment. And so having access to different viewpoints and being able to bring experience from multiple different places, I think is really beneficial to a lot of IP owners out there that maybe are much small to mid-sized companies, whether they're animation studios or, general production companies. So there's a lot of people in the industry now who have a very strong track record and experience who can bring that to smaller companies and help them grow, but also in the creator space. And that's a really exciting space for me, working with creators that are looking to scale off YouTube, for example, or other social platforms into what we know as the more traditional world. They have got some really interesting new models, stuff that we would never even have conceived of until really recently. And there's learnings for both sides. And I think that's a really great thing to be able to share with all kinds of clients.
Yeah. Laura?
Yeah, I think as a consultant now, whether your client is a head of a department at a big company or a business owner as a creator, you're sat outside the business in many ways, and so you have that sort of macro landscape viewpoint where when a business owner or head of department is in the business day to day, it can be quite operational. It's hard to think strategically. I'm quite new to consultancy, so I know that from leading teams before. It's quite hard sometimes to kind of take a step back and have that strategic view. And so working with a consultant, you really have like an extra brain as to devise strategies and draw on those years of experience that a consultant has developed. Well, speaking for myself, I've worked across lots of different brands of different size IPs and various different audience touch points that any kids or animation would be. So therefore you can draw on loads of different experience to create those strategies. So it feels really enjoyable as well, because it's just, that you're adding such value.
Yeah. And Robin?
Yeah, echoing everything really. It gives you a sort of freedom and agility to work across many sides of the industry. So I'm doing digital strategy, distribution, acquisitions, developments. I'm working across all of those areas, and having a real current knowledge of all of those areas helps everybody I work with. So.
And are you noticing any recurring themes that the clients you're working with are, the things they're struggling with, things that,
Yeah, sure. YouTube. It's the hot topic, and it has been for a few years, and people are still trying to figure it out, and the monetization, the strategy, how you grow audience, all of that. The dark arts of YouTube, basically, how you grow, how you get audience, and so I've been doing that with Laura and Aardman for quite a while. We sort of shared that Shaun the Sheep journey, growing that brand in that area, and so we can bring that knowledge, that experience of doing it, and to other studios, which is very helpful.
And John, what are you seeing in your consulting?
Well, the interesting thing I see when you look at it, the creative vision a lot of times is just so far ahead and the understanding the business of it. You have to kind of coincide or work together with working the model of how you finance it, or it's like a business plan, actually. And then you need to be looking at your schedule originally right at the start, building your budget that's realistic to that schedule, and then looking at how you actually try to bring the money together. And that's always the question, where's the money? We're always looking for the money. But if you haven't got that kind of started, you're kind of already running without a safety net. And you just don't understand where you're going to go, because then I'm going to this broadcaster, and they say no. Oh, what do I do next? You have to have a plan B, a plan A, a plan B, a plan C. And more than anyone, we all know that we've got to hustle. This business is built on hustling and relationships. And if you sit in your room thinking it's going to happen, it won't. And, it's the nature of the world.
It's that entrepreneurialism that I think is really apparent across the industry for us all, would be, but also just everyone is dynamic and trying different things. And on the YouTube piece, I feel like what works for one organisation might be different if you've got different resource, and having a fresh pair of eyes. You need to tailor what you're doing to your audience, but also being mindful of the resource that you've got, and to continue that journey. So it's tailoring strategies as well.
So, and with your different perspectives and things you're seeing in the recent year, 2 years, let's look at the animation industry as a whole. If you could describe it in one word, the landscape and what is going on, how would you describe it? Robin, I know you had a
Well,
headline.
I'd say it's more fragmented, more global, and it needs to be more entrepreneurial, like carrying on from what Laura was just saying, than ever before. So that's my line.
Who's next? Gemma.
I think I see discombobulation. I see, different people at different stages. There's confusion. There's rabbit in the headlights. Some people have kind of, taken on a much more entrepreneurial route, and, risk is often rewarded. But risk is a scary place to go, particularly if you're a legacy company, with a reputation to keep and, a huge catalog to manage. It can, and investors, whatever. But generally sort of taking a line of risk and trying new things and doing it with people by your side who have experience and have maybe been through highs and lows of the industry over a long period of time. We've always had highs and lows. It's about kind of using the right moments and the right strategies to get through, and then things rise again eventually.
Yeah. John?
I was just thinking about it because I think people, and the majority of people are facing reality where we're at. It's a really difficult time. But once you've got through that point, there's that kind of denial. You've kind of have an acceptance where you kind of go, okay, what are we going to do? And what I saw a lot, especially at Annecy this year, lots of people were, okay, they may not be having broadcaster conversations, but we're actually meeting with other co-producers and trying to work out how they could work together, and more embracing that collaboration and the case of, there's other sources of funding. We can't be reliant on one. The likes of the BBC or Milkshake or ITV or wherever in the UK or in Ireland, RT, they can't help everyone. They have only limited budgets. They try their best what they do. So we have to rise creatively to feel this is the best project we can do to actually help get over the line. Mediocrity doesn't work anymore. It has to be the best.
Mm-hmm. And Laura?
I wrote down collaboration for sure, because I think those who are winning are collaborating, whether that being bringing in the resource at the right time that they need, or working to form strategic partnerships. I think that's really important. And to be agile and proactive with it. It is, we're not seeing the same. This is not really a word. You asked for a word, is it?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, agile, proactive, and collaboration. I think then you will win if you embody those 3 words.
I think there's definitely, it feels like there's a sense, I got the same sense at Annecy as well, that the time for sort of being upset about it is sort of passing, and people are rolling up their sleeves a bit more and thinking, well, we've got to do something, because it's not going to come back to a way that it was. It is fundamentally now disrupted and different.
The other thing to remember, the children's industry as a whole, and I've worked in this business over 30 years, has always found ways to adapt. Always. Like, we're the most creative part of this whole media sector, in a ways, because we're the first to suffer. When the cuts come, they come in the kids. But we adapt and move forward. And those learnings are taken up across the board from what we don't get paid enough to do it, to be quite honest.
And Robin, we were talking as well about some interesting case studies that you've worked on where people are adapting and thinking more like creators, and we'll come on to that in a bit more, but some of the
yeah, definitely.
YouTube
I mean,
successes.
Creators are building IP themselves on YouTube, direct to consumer. We've heard that a lot yesterday. They had some brilliant case studies, and one I'm aware of is Waleed Omar and Little Critter Studios. He's very entrepreneurial. So in 18 months, he's financed 100 shorts for YouTube, 50 longs, and rolled those out and read the data and adapted and everything, and has hit 2 million subs on his channel for a brand new IP. That's really fast growth, and over 1 billion views now. And now he's like really leaning into that creator economy and looking at all the other brands in his wheelhouse, what they're doing off YouTube, learning from those, looking at sponsors, looking at CP, doing his own CP, doing all sorts of other things. So you're seeing these like really interesting entrepreneurial initiatives, which are great. And I think he's a great one to learn from, I think.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about the creator mindset, because this is something we talked about, entrepreneurial mindset, taking risk, and it feels like, doing that sort of thing. But we have a lot of people through our consultancy and mine independently. They understand that there is a need to be on YouTube, but it takes time and investment and patience, and it's not going to fund your show. But some of these really good success stories show that it is possible. But what were some of do we need to think more like creators, basically? Shella?
Yeah, I mean, there's yes, without doubt. And part of that is just letting go a little bit. In the creator world, they'll do 3 or 4 different buckets of content so that they can throw it all at the wall and see what sticks. And I think the biggest gap that I'm seeing with a lot of people that we work with, partners in the industry, is data illiteracy. Creators they understand data. It's kind of, part of their everyday working life. And so understanding that data and then feeding it back into that process and allowing gaps in production to enable that to happen. I mean, it's been coined the digital first production workflow. Call it what you like. It's essentially, allowing room for data to be understood and then fed back so that you can keep iterating and giving them more of what they want to see. Mm-hmm. Rather than being stuck on, as an adult, I like this character and, somehow it's dented my ego that episode with that character is getting the least views. Somehow we've got to let go a little bit and, use the information that we have at our fingertips through these platforms to drive what we do.
And Laura, talking about audience development strategies, I guess data is at the heart of that.
Yeah, definitely. Just to become on something you said as well, Jella, that I really agree. You need to iterate. So rather than thinking in 52 episodes of of old, it's okay. That's my strategic plan of what I want to aim for. A tranche of episodes, 100, whatever it is. But you're looking at it in batches so that you're delivering it. You can stop, think, iterate based on that data. And yeah, it is letting go of the ego, isn't it? Because you could be quite wedded to one direction and then change things. So I think that's where creators are seeing, because they're wearing every hat. On the collaboration piece, I think in the past, we've seen in sort of live action for creators, there's a lot of collaboration. So Miss Rachel and Blippi, and these are big examples, but Mr. Beast, Mark Rober, there's lots of collaboration. But now we're seeing that in the animation space with creators as well. And I think that everyone, the reason they're doing that is to look at the audience overlap. So rewarding the audiences that really, who would be surprised and delighted that those 2 characters from separate universes are together. And then creating, borrowing from each other's audiences. So some really good examples I've seen recently are like Gracie's Corner, who are obviously huge in the States, they were huge everywhere, but they were creators to start with, and Gracie's Corner and Gabby Stollhouse have come together. But then small examples of that in the animation space. So I saw Silly Crocodile, which is Just for Kids channel the other day, and Barkster Songs, and they're a much bigger channel with a small creator. But people are, I think, sometimes if we're, there's people in the room thinking, sort of mid to medium-sized production companies, look at the creators who have similar audiences to you and start partnering in strategic partnerships. You can go a lot further by partnering and be really creative with it. Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's also the thing I find, we all know the model is broken. And when you think about the new creators, they actually don't give a shit about production fee. They're just getting it done. And, it's something, how do we embrace that to still try and survive? But, it's a lot to be learned. And we're all talking, how does it get paid? And someone, or as an industry, we have to come up with how it gets paid. Not just the producers and the creators, the broadcasters, the bodies, investors. We all need to come together to try and work out how that's done going forward. Because if not, we won't all survive.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
Well, that was my next subject point, which is the elephant in the room. How do we pay for it all, right? Because everyone understands they need to be able to get directly to the audience. It would be great if they could set up their own YouTube channel and prove their case before potentially, or not, trying to sell it on to a broadcaster. But how do we pay for it? How do we come by the money? What are the different routes? And
it's always been, forget about the streamers when they came in, those with lucky few, like I guarantee you in this room, there's probably only maybe 3 or 4 companies who actually got a commission from one of the streamers globally. So that hasn't impacted it. The repercussions have been on cost and different. But it's a jigsaw. It's always been a jigsaw. It's just unfortunately when it was a 500-piece jigsaw, it's now a 2,000-piece jigsaw. And that's what it's trying to work it out. And that's when I go back to when I said earlier, it's a business plan. And I know creatives don't want to hear that, but it is a business plan where you have to go, okay, where am I starting? You know, you can't suddenly go, oh, I'm reliant on this bit of funding coming in, and then you don't get it. You have to be everywhere, pushing. You know, you have to be talking to broadcasters. You have to be talking to the fundings. I mean, we're very lucky in Ireland. You know, we have great support, obviously, from our national broadcaster, RTE, but also from Screen Ireland and Commission of Mon, which is the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland. They really help us, and they try and push the project, and we get, you know, we can raise, even though we're a small country, we can raise nearly 50%, including those numbers and the tax incentive. And I know there's similar things go on in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland, but for me, as an Irish person, we're looking at why aren't they supporting England? You know, that makes no sense. And there needs to be more support for an industry. And I'm not talking about easy money. I'm talking about young companies initially who are trying to start off, and they need help. And there's young, great creators out there who need something, whether it's in development money, just to get that start so they can move forward. And, you know, they're the lifeblood of the industry. And if they start falling away, you know, it's a scary proposition.
So if you're meeting a new client as a consultant, any of you, how do you start talking about viable funding strategies for them? What would be what your top tips?
I give them a reality check.
Yeah.
And I just say, like, it's very funny. A couple of people, because I do various things where I'm not just doing on the funding. I do private equity stuff around M&A, and I'm also do board advisory. But when I sit down with someone, and this goes back to the point where creative is not aligned with the business strategy at all. And I get them to go, because I think first thing, and it's a pain, but I believe that once you have that first script, you try to model out some way what the schedule is, because you have to understand, you can't be taking a figure out of your head for the budget. And the only way you're getting a budget is by doing that. And that's the starting point. Once we have that number, then we look, okay, what can we do in Ireland? But the great thing about this, and going back to Annecy, is people are realizing now, we got to talk to partners. We can't actually do it ourselves. Like, of course, there's opportunities in certain cases, but we need to be talking, whether it's with the French, the Canadians, the Irish, you know, as neighbours, and where can we maximise funding? And we're not talking about, you know, there's opportunities there with tax credits for different things and different elements, and you share, but 100% of nothing is nothing. So you have to realise that in the case of, you know, it's better to have 50% and have a partner, and then you can lean onto that partner. But you have to know, when you're starting those conversations, what actually, I have to be able to answer, how much is this, I believe it's going to cost? And then your partner may tell you differently, but at least you've got a starting point, and then you structure where you go. Who's going to be hopefully my lead broadcaster? Am I going to have 5 broadcasters? Which fundings can I go if I went with a French partner or a Canadian partner? Yeah. So there's a lot of detail to go into it.
And it's obviously not enough to have a great creative idea. You've got to have the commercial understanding.
If you're not proactive, so you could be waiting for answers for 2 years from a commissioning broadcaster. You better be proactive because of that opportunity. Because I've seen people get that commission and they think it's done, and then they realise, oh shit, there's 20% still to find.
Yeah.
And
often the hardest bit. The last 20%.
Of course.
And it's not just having, once you've gone through the struggle of actually making the show or feature film, it's the business part of it that I think often falls down in terms of, you know, it's so costly to reach an audience or to do it effectively that you need to be thinking of that audience strategy within the development and how you're going to have a longevity in that IP. And there's been recent, obviously, changes within, or recent announcements from the government in terms of changes. So the Global Screen Fund boost from 7 billion to 7 million, I should say. It'd be nice if it was 7 billion, wouldn't it?
18 million.
So, now is an 18 million, which is more than double, and it's fantastic. And that is really incentivising co-productions and the international business strand, which I think is really important because that really unlocks it's thinking about how you export. So whether you need to invest in dubs to unlock a broadcaster deal or to widen your digital footprint, work with a consultant to work out a global strategy. They're all types of things that you can unlock from that funding. And that's now coming, and there's a lot more of that money to access. I think, when you sort of saying about the commerciality of it, on feature film, there was a session yesterday around feature film, and it was really upsetting, really. In 2024, we didn't have any British animated films at all released, and 4 times as many animated films are released in Germany, for instance, and that's like stark numbers. So I would say that, there's routes to supporting distribution that we should be thinking about. Distribution is a inherently risky business, really, isn't it? You're taking a punt, so any structural funding that can happen more is really important. So there was a real call for a 25% tax relief on the P&A funds to support widening the releases of feature films across the independent sector, so not just animation, across budgets worth 50 million or less. That's been put on ice at the moment. The government hasn't responded to that, but things like that would really make sure that once you've made your wonderful film, that then it can actually get the best marketing and distribution plan to support it. So I think there's lots of work still to be done in terms of funding, but there are some glimmers of hope.
And we were talking previously about the new announcement. Some of the details not clear at the moment. It does sound like good news, but there's more to be done. And you picked up a small frustration with the fact that for small companies or independent creators, there may be some limits to what is available, and that's something that
I think some of that funding is only available for companies that are 3 years and older.
That's right.
And so if you're a company that's already made it, you have access to money to go and expand your business even further, which is wonderful, of course. You can spend that on dubbing, that you can then, extend your reach through distribution, YouTube, whatever. But if you're a younger company, and there are, a lot of younger companies now in the industry that are kind of coming from all sorts of areas, whether they're creators launching or indies launching, you can't access that. So that the sort of model is favoring the more established companies rather than helping those that really need it and have these new models that we're all talking about and being entrepreneurial. So there's this kind of weird dynamic going on where there's sort of help, but only for some. I would add one other point in terms of where do you find the money, and it kind of all ties in really, is just get really good with numbers. Get really good at forecasting a 10-year plan across every single derivative. You can raise against future earnings. You don't even necessarily need to give copyright away. But if you're really good with numbers and you sort of, that modeling out of your future earnings can be critical to then go and look, okay, not all of us can get these funds. Not all of us maybe can tap into grants. We might not be in Ireland or Scotland or Wales. But if you're really smart with your numbers and forecasting out, you can raise against that.
We talked before about private investment and how, that's obviously another route that some people look to, but it's quite hard to get private investment when the potential investors don't necessarily understand the business of animation and how long that might take to sort of bring you a return.
Yeah, most finance guys don't know the difference between good property and a bad show. It's very, very difficult for most people outside of the media industry to know that, but they do understand numbers.
Yeah, and this links back then to YouTube and how you can use the data from platforms like YouTube to really put together something that's quite tangible, that can show a business plan and projections and growth. So again, the commercial understanding is so important to being able to make all of this work.
We're coming from a world of sort of nice ideas and lovely looking decks and sort of, Bibles, which is great. You need that. But if you don't have numbers stacking up behind it that make sense and aren't giving return at an adequate rate in a market where commissions are fewer and fewer or restrictive, then you're already struggling.
Yeah. That comes from quite a clear global distribution plan as well, doesn't it?
Clear global distribution across every, and licensing and merchandise and gaming.
Yeah, every window, every territory, really think about where it can go And when you're developing project, think global. Back to that really. Yeah, it's a global brand in the making.
Yeah, really, really important.
The one problem, though, we should, because we actually have experience in lots of these things. Most of the people out here don't.
Yeah.
And it's very scary.
Yeah.
How do I do that? So to plug our services, we're happy to help.
Well.
But are there any other funding sort of routes or strategies or things that you maybe think aren't as well known as they could be and that would be helpful to this room? I think we've maybe covered a lot of them.
I actually think it's funny because what you might think is the obvious route, you can end up having a conversation about something else and picking up funding. I'm involved in a show where we're actually doing something around Alzheimer's, and we've been talking to the Alzheimer's Society in the UK and the US, and they've now put us in touch with a foundation about raising money to support the project. And that's kind of exciting because it's a new area and it's something important, the project's important to us to do, and it's opened up a door that we didn't expect.
Yeah.
And you got to think outside the box. You got to try and connect. When you're looking at it, how am I going to do this? You got to look under every nook and every cranny and just try and find that money.
As you said earlier, hustle.
Yeah.
And get out to conferences like this.
And I know it, like some conferences it's expensive and things like that, but I can't speak for the UK. In Ireland, we're supporters where we're subsidised for virtually every conference. If we want to go, they help us go. Because you have to build relationships. This business is built on relationships. And you need to be seen or connect. And this is what's brilliant about CMC. It's not this pitch. It's a more social environment. And it's great because you can meet someone in a bar or in a coffee shop and have a chat. But if you're young, and I know it's hard, but you just have to kind of have the backbone to go up to people and say hello. And you find out most people are very nice and they want to help people.
Just on the impact space, I work across animation, but I've also worked across other genres. And in the documentary space, that's something that's been really well done in feature film. You go into impact organisations and philanthropic. So if your show would say about food and, kids animated show about food, but going to food organisations, it's being savvy about those things, but other sort of genres have done that to great success, so leaning on that. I think sometimes, to your point around like the big strategic plan and thinking big, you can unlock. There's a lot of talk around the EIS scheme not being available for independent or film, but it is if you have that plan. So that incentivizes investors because they get tax relief. So understanding that, because if you've got a huge plan around an IP, not just one feature, then it means that you're building that brand and it's easier to get that private investment. And it would be remiss of me not to do a plug for Creative Wales because I'm on the ball, but they are changing all of the structures to really enable co-productions going forward. So although we have in Wales also had development funding, it hasn't really enabled co-productions as easily and to collaboration, and that's been a real recognition. So now that's going to change. So look out in the next sort of 6 months because those rules are going to be changing where make it far easier for Welsh and Irish, English, Welsh, much more focus on collaboration, which should be really helpful.
And just to say also on the UK Global Screen Fund, that announcement, as we said, is not... the detail is not all there, but if you're a small company that would like to be able to get hold of some of those funds, speak to Animation UK because they will lobby on our behalf, and hopefully we can make some changes to that which will benefit everybody.
There's one other area for funding that not many people are doing or talking about, which is working with brands and advertisers. The world of advertising is really changing. As consumers, we don't want to connect with 20-second ads with annoying music or whatever. Everyone sort of fast forwards, But brands are looking for new ways to connect with audiences through content and storytelling. And YouTube and that kind of funding model actually work really well together because you won't have YouTube telling you that we can't have product placement in the same way that a public service broadcaster will. So, if you're very smart with that product placement or how you collaborate with those brands, there are ways that you can then create yourself a pipeline of content that could maybe feed YouTube, that could then start monetizing and feed other buckets of content. So
yeah, those big brands are trying to find COPPA compliant ways of coming into the space, aren't they? They need to reach that audience. That's where all the audience are. So like Crayola are calling out for ideas at the moment. So that's worth looking at. But ad funded itself on YouTube is very tricky, of course, as we've been hearing.
Okay, I'm going to move us on from money, but if money is the elephant in the room, then AI is the robot kicking down the door, right? We can't really have a serious conversation about the future of animation without touching on it. It's been talked about in different sessions. It's here, it's reshaping workflows, it potentially is threatening creative jobs, we don't know. But what are you sensing from your clients about their feelings towards AI? What's the vibe?
Curiosity and fear.
A nice blend.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think my feelings, I think we all have to embrace it. And I'm not talking about creative elements. I'm talking about how we incorporate it into our working life and how do we incorporate it into production and to mitigate and save costs. That's happening. And if we don't do it, like if you're not doing it or not looking at it, you're way behind the 8 ball. Because everyone else is doing it. And they may say they're not, but they are. They're looking, or they're in the process. And we have to work the balance of how we implement it into our production and our creative industry. But we're not looking to replace the creative. That's the key. We don't want AI-driven content like of character or script or anything like that. It's just how we implement it ourselves as an industry. Because if we don't embrace, it's...
Yeah, I think there's a workflow boost pro, I think, but possibly with it, but there's a fear of a really synthetic product at the end, and lacks that human touch. And the other thing is rights as well, obviously. So I know some of my clients, the AI content on YouTube, UGC, is getting really, really bad, and the content ID tools don't pick it up. So
Right.
I think that's got to be worked on, but I'm sure that is being worked on a lot to capture that.
Well, actually, sorry, to be clear, I'm not saying on the animation. I'm talking more about other elements of the production process. I don't think we have to be very careful where it goes onto actual creating content.
Yeah.
But in terms of the operational side of things, the commercial side of things, planning, thinking about numbers, it's a useful tool to sort of help you.
Yeah.
And especially, I know this from some of my work, on the stuff I do on my own, it's quite nice to use ChatGPT to just bounce ideas around and just to...
As a sounding board.
A sounding board,
I find
so it's useful.
Yeah, and I'm neurodivergent, and I find it really helped to crystallise my thoughts. So I'm not short of ideas, but sometimes I need to crystallise or make things concise, and so I'll use Claude, which is helpful. So on the operational side, I think it can really help. I think I don't feel that the copyright guidelines that the government has produced are enough. So they're different to what the US and the rest of Europe are saying, and I think that's the worry for me. So that if you have a copyright infringement, you can't effectively take litigation in the UK in the same way that the US has been able to do and is doing, like the big companies are. Obviously, there's lots of people in this room who aren't big companies. You'd never be able to go up against these people anyway, but it's important because it affects everybody, and I think that needs work on. But certainly, like we keep talking about the money and how there's not enough, or commissions are low. We're not seeing the same revenue on ad spend with YouTube. Well, if there's ways to be more nimble and cost efficient in our workflows, then I think we have to take them, because that will mean you survive or you don't. Because there's creators who are wearing every single hat and doing it in a very streamlined fashion, and then we've got big companies, and it's like the middle that will hurt unless we sort of make things more efficient and profitable, but not lose, not for that creative. You don't want to lose the creative or jobs, but certainly we need to make it more efficient if we're to be profitable.
Yeah.
There's another side of it, which is not just the sort of productivity or cost cutting, but the ethical side of it, which is around, we work with some partners who will not touch AI tools that haven't licensed from the industry to get their points of reference.
Yes.
And so we're actually working with AI companies to license animated shows and IP to them for a fee that they pay for that they can then scrape to train their models. And so there are AI companies, there are certainly clients out there that will only work with ethical AI tools, and there are AI companies now that will actually pay a fee per minute to license your content and do that so that they can sort of, do the right thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there's an opportunity to earn from that and then use that platform or that AI tool in a way that benefits and, is ultimately sort of doing right by the industry. So
Interesting. The title of this session is obviously asking quite a big question, which is the future of UK and global animation. So if you can just tell me what that is. where are we headed? And if you look ahead for the next, let's say, 5 years, what is giving you hope to be positive? What's the good news?
I've had 2 really hopeful conversations in the last week with broadcasters from outside of Western world, more in the Eastern and Middle Eastern world, who are embracing the new approach, open to non-exclusivity, open to kind of part commissioning or kind of, minority commissioning, but in exchange allowing freedom for the IP on the understanding that we'll all grow together. And that, for me, is really, really encouraging because we're really sort of preaching and evangelizing about the importance of this multi-platform approach. So that's been really exciting for me.
Right. Robin?
There's some good new opportunities I'm seeing in the US coming up with vast channels syndicating into the Amazon ecosystem. So you're getting, because the ad money's not so good at the moment, you're getting subscription money instead.
Right.
And they're non-exclusive deals, and that's starting to generate better revenues. So that's encouraging. And then just brands coming into the space more. I think, we've probably hit the lowest, hopefully, that point, and then and Crayola, like I said, and other brands coming into the space and getting more involved and helping that direct-to-consumer piece. Yeah.
Okay, John.
I think the next generation is what excites me, and what they're prepared to do. They're kind of unlike some of us older, where they don't care about risk. They're willing to take it, push it. They're impatient in a good way just to move forward. And I speak for myself, but they're very digital literate. And they're able to maneuver themselves in this whole world, and that excites me. And we should be embracing them. We should have them in our businesses. We're an older generation. I'm talking about us in a sense. There should be more younger people in the commissioning and in content, because they can actually speak to the audience. There's a time to bring young blood in and move it forward. It's just my thought.
Yeah, I really agree with that.
Yeah.
I have 2. First one would be...
That's good, more hope.
Okay. Yeah, more hope. I'm always positive. I think it's really positive, and talking about AI as well, that YouTube has come out and it's going to sort of deprioritise AI content, and it's got a new tool that's looking to do that. So I think that's really positive. And then they're rolling out, and I don't know whether it's yet for kids, but I've certainly seen it for general entertainment, is new tools to suggest more content as well, like what your type of audience would like. So it's kind of helping creators in that sense. So I think that's always beneficial to have better tools. And then complete change from YouTube. But I'm really hopeful that we will see more feature films, animated feature films, British-made animated feature films. I think cinema is still so important. And the ideal, hopefully that 25% tax credit will come off in the autumn statement, and for P&A spend, and it would make a huge difference. So when the review in September that everyone can do, if you can just ask for that, I think that would be really useful. But a plan where you have content to dovetail across YouTube for an independent film and a film in cinemas, a really strategic plan that covers both those areas is my hope for within the next 5 years, that we'll have a buoyant
And
time with that.
YouTube, as ever, has been the dominant theme of the CMC this year. Where do we think, I haven't even prepped you on this question, but where do we think YouTube will be in 5 years? Do we think it would have...
And stronger.
Stronger and stronger.
That's my view.
No, agree.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Amazon with subscription, but also Google has that. Well, YouTube has that now as well. So you can have, there are so many different products and available to you. Depending whether they're right for your audience and right for your content is another thing, and that's why you need a strategic view on it. But you can have paid subscriptions, paid channels on YouTube, as well as free content and ad spend. So they're just going to become bigger and bigger. That said, there are, in the animated space, there are still needs to be a broad landscape of content. Not all consumers are on YouTube, not all audiences are on YouTube, so you do need to be on the other big platforms and have that everything everywhere approach, and so that you're tailoring to different audiences. There are, especially in the kids space, lots of parents who don't want their kids to watch YouTube, and you need to be where those parents will want to be as well, whether that's Amazon or public service broadcaster. So it's about making sure that the content that you've created, you're thinking about parents and kids and where you should be and creating a plan that's appropriate for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, well, it'll have product shelves and all the other stuff you can get. So all the things that creators are doing at the moment where they're having to monetize off YouTube, hopefully they'll be able to do that within YouTube as well and make more money through the platform, and ads will be improved, hopefully. The algorithm will evolve and be more effective, and a few things.
Okay.
There's 2 deals that have happened, in the last week in France that are really interesting. France TV partnering with Amazon and putting all of their content on there, and TF1's done that with Netflix. And I think we'll see more and more of that as the public service broadcasters and the major broadcasters eventually kind of acknowledge the fact that this is where the streamers are, where most people hang out, and it'll, there'll be more and more, and it'll kind of essentially come down to probably a few big global streamers and then a few other bits and pieces dotted around. But I think that is a seismic shift that will probably, be a catalyst for happening in other regions as well.
Great.
On that, I think it's interesting that it's both the examples of France, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who have quotas. Must be because of that. And so if we had quotas around British content being on streamers, would that force more collaboration? And I think France has done a great job in making sure that French-made content is available and ubiquitous on those platforms. So I wonder whether those platforms were struggling to fill those quotas, and that's a strategic play. So it must. I'd really love to see that in Britain and Ireland.
Okay, thank you for your crystal ball gazing. We're going to open up to the floor. So there's a question. There's a few. There's one here. There's one there.
Thank you. Great panel. Thank you very much. My question for you is, we've talked a lot about gaining production company support, gaining broadcasters. What about retaining broadcaster and production support, especially because a lot of shows struggle to gain their audience within that first 30 days virality that, some shows, some movies manage to gain, like K-pop Demon Hunters most recently, but a lot of shows need time to build that audience. So how do you convince broadcasters that just because you're not an instant sensation among kids and parents in the first 30 days or so, how do you convince them to keep your show on the program? Thank you.
Who wants to take that?
I mean, it's a very good question, but I suppose because at the end of the day, it's a lot of the time it's about ratings, but you have to say with the public broadcaster on the content that they're actually trying to support originality and locality. And you would hope that if they've invested a significant amount, they're not going to write it off. You would hope. And I think most broadcasters will try, and I'm not talking about streamers, I'm talking about the broadcasters, will try to find a home and maneuver it around the slot to try and give it a chance. Because they've taken a risk on that show, and it's not something you're going to discard. So, trust me, It may not seem like it at times, but I believe they are. You know, they're similar to us. You know, it's all about, it's a puzzle, and it's kind of, you know, pushing it forward.
Yeah, and we're talking a lot about direct to consumer as well. So you've got the power to really go out there and try and do that yourself and really build your brand yourself. So don't rely on the broadcasters to actually do that alone. You really, it's being entrepreneurial and really going out there and doing it, and then generating really good marketing assets as well. So you can do that yourself and furnish your broadcast with all of those as well, your partners with all those, so they've got everything they need to do the promotions.
I was just going to add that, yeah, you can't rely on just one place now. So it's about that plan of how you reach your audiences across and working out where your audiences are. So in that example, does it lend itself to music? Yes, it does. So where are you in music platforms? Where are you in terms of merchandise? And that's huge to consider when you're a small entity to even be able to do that. But I think having that wider plan of understanding where your audience is, so you're not all eggs in one basket, is important. And then, you know, you can hopefully raise funds in tranches to deliver that against that plan, because you can't just rely on one place for your content these days, which is why I think that, you know, yeah, we were lucky when streamers were, you know, Netflix was buying our properties, but it was a closed shop really, as in your IP didn't live beyond that, and that is difficult to brand build then, so you need to consider in a number of places where your brand can live.
Okay. Next question.
Hi. My question is about original IP in general, because I went to Annecy last month, and it just seemed to me that, from what I'd seen speaking to broadcasters, studios, that there seems to be a sort of a sea shift where broadcasters seems to be taking more risks in original IP now, as opposed to existing IP. Do you agree?
It's hard to know, because I always think that's a funny comment. When you look at in the last 20 years, the 3 or 4 biggest brands were all original. They weren't based on a book. They were actually an original IP. And you've got Bluey, you've got Peppa, Paw Patrol. You know, they weren't an IP. They were someone had gone there and sat in a room and come up with an idea, and they'd worked it and got it out there. It's hard. You hear the conversation where they're going, "Oh, we need a book," but I don't buy that either, because just because a book of a certain generation worked then, it doesn't mean the kids are evolving so quickly that, yes, it probably, I think creators need to really push and understand their market. And just because we're being told one thing, I wouldn't adhere to it. I just think you have to do what you think is right. And if you believe in your property enough, you're the only person who can actually drive it forward. So I think there's opportunities across the board, definitely.
Okay, thank you. There's a question right at the back, a guy in the white T-shirt.
Hello. When you are building finance plans and looking, you spoke a little bit about funding, but I just wanted to see what you guys thought about what are the attractive countries right now when it comes to funding opportunities, both kind of from the funding bodies and the broadcasters side of things. Thank you.
Obviously, I would say Ireland. And as we like to market ourselves, we're the only English-speaking country in Europe at the moment. The EU, sorry. But no, I mean, look, the norm, the big two obviously are, when you look besides Ireland, is France and Canada. But there's great opportunities in places like Belgium, Luxembourg, Italy. Their tax credit, I think, is 50% now. So there's and ChatGPT. Trust me, you go in there and it shows at everything.
Where is the money?
And then you can actually what you need to do is to start to actually delve and go onto those websites. And there's so much information. There's on the EBU they have a section on what's available in funding. I can't remember the word exactly, but there is showing the different grants and the different tax incentives, what each territory does in Europe. And it's a very good starting point. And the other thing is, though, just because someone says there's a model in a certain way, a model can be broken. And I think about certain territories say, oh, we need to do 70%, we need to own 70%. Don't, just because they tell you that, don't buy it. Because I just go, don't kid a kidder, because at the end of the day, I've been in this business too long, and everything is flexible. Everything can be moved. But I would start on that. There's that information out there. And obviously try, like Annecy, or going to international markets and meeting your French producers, or your Canadian, or Belgium, or Luxembourg. These people are happy to help you and to steer, because there's opportunities there where there's different things for different elements of the production. So it's a good spot, and virtually every territory.
And the BFI list out all the countries they do
Do they break it down?
Yeah. So look at that list as well. And but yeah, there's many. I mean, good territories to work with. But you've got to find a partner that you really are in sync with, and a studio partner.
And as Robert said, you do need to do your due diligence on. Just because someone says, "I love your project," check. Talk to people or your counterparts in the industry here in the UK, just to make sure of these people, because look, I'm not saying there's lots of nice, great people out there, but there is chances, and you've just got to be just smart who you get into bed with, because it's a long-term thing.
Yeah.
I think we miss being part of Creative Europe in the UK, though. There's been calls to remedy the loss of that and the collaboration that can happen across Europe because of being part of it. Yeah. And that's really disappointing that we're not part of. The government didn't accept the proposal to come back in as an associate member. So I think that has been really disappointing, both for the import and export of our content.
I'm going to throw China in the mix as well.
And then we've got a question, but I'll let you get all the way down.
So I'm Kate, I'm from Animation UK, and I'm not even sure I'm supposed to ask a question, and I want to adopt the model of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and ask my friends and the audience this question, because and it's very selfish, I have bounced from session to session over the last 48 hours, and my to-do list has got so huge in terms of the things that need to be done. Yeah. So I wanted to ask a bunch of consultants and the audience, maybe not today, but contact me. What is the one thing, animation, your voice to government, your voice to the industry bodies, your agents on earth, what's the one thing we need to do amongst all of the things that we've talked about at various sessions? Just one, because we can throw our whole weight. I love Ireland's development fund, but I don't want to lead the answer to this, but I kind of love that. But give me one thing to go away and do.
25% tax credit on P&A.
Nice, Laura, thank you.
Widen the award to companies from day one, particularly if they've got a track record as individuals.
Cool.
I'd say direct.
That too. Isn't it? Right.
Direct some funding to digital creators as well, to give them a start on YouTube. Yeah,
and which ABC are doing, Screen Australia are doing in the marketplace as well. I think Screen Ireland actually did an interesting thing there for the last 2 or 3 years. They actually put out money where you could actually, for development and growth, but anyone could apply. It wasn't, if you were a young producer or a first timer, you could apply. Okay. And it gave you that kickstart to actually try to build a mini slate. And people need to help with getting their content, getting that idea onto paper and to move it forward. So that kind of support. And I do know and I said it earlier, I know it's done in certain parts, but there's not enough out there or focused on England itself.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much. Sorry, that was very...
That's all right, and I've got a flashing red light, so this is perfect time to draw this to a close. Thank you once again to Animation UK for their support. There is plenty of tea and coffee over at the hubs and at the bar, sponsored by Blue Zoo. Coming up next in here is Digital Discussions Built to Last, Creating Sustainable Business Models on Social Media, and that's at 2 p.m. That's going to be a controversial new look at the way that digital platforms operate and distribute revenue and value. Thank you once again to my panel and everyone for coming. Enjoy the rest of your day.